Hey, what is going on, everyone? I hadn't done a stream in a little while, so I thought I would do, it's kind of a last minute decision to do this one tonight, so a little bit shorter notice than normal. But there's a heritage auction going on tonight. There are some pretty cool books coming up for this auction, some that have already sold that some went for some pretty big numbers, and I've got those kind of marked to talk about a little bit as well. And I always like to go over some books that I recently picked up first, but I wanted to mention this one. So for my last video that came out just a couple days ago, I've got a giveaway that is going on right now. And hey, Maurice, yeah, thanks for joining. I got a giveaway that's going on right now, and it's for this Batman number 34. It is missing the centerfold, but still, it's Batman number 34, 1946. Really cool cover with Batman and Robin riding a motorcycle, going after some villains, that kind of thing. But I've got a video where I picked up some pretty big books recently, and so I thought it'd be fun to give kind of a cool book away as well. So make sure you go check that one out. Follow the instructions. You have a chance to win that book. And then I just, like I said, I always like to go over some of my recent pickups, and I have made some pretty big adjustments to my keeper list lately. And if you're not familiar with my keeper list, it's what I call it's what some people might call their PC. I think I started calling it my keeper list because of ETA Nick's channel. He had his like 500 keepers that he was doing a countdown for. And so I just started calling it my keeper list. And for me, it has changed over time, where at first it was kind of up around 100. And I feel like I'd said it was going to be 50, and it kind of ballooned up to 100. And then I was like, I really need to start cutting this thing back some. And so I cut it back to 50. And then I cut it back to 35. And then as I started getting a few bigger books over the last, say, 6 months to a year, I have now cut it back to 20. And so it's at 20 right now. And in the last couple of videos I've done, I've shown some of the books that I've picked up recently that have gone onto that keeper list, that have been a result, that have caused it to decrease in size. And hey, thanks everybody for joining. We've got Something Wong, Lee, and Joe IM. And yeah, so thanks everybody for joining the chat. And so just a couple of the ones that I've picked up recently that have kicked some books off my keeper list. And this was one I showed a few videos ago, and it's the first Silver Age book I've had on my keeper list for a while. And this was this 0.5 of Amazing Fantasy 15. And it is missing page 13 and has a coupon cut out of the back here, but just a super like nice presenting 0.5, which was the big selling point for me with it. The colors are great. And like there's no Marvel chipping. A lot of people like to talk about that. There tends to be a lot of Marvel chipping on Amazing Fantasy 15, and so this one doesn't have that. And but yeah, colors were great. So that was a recent pickup that has now kicked some books off of my keeper list. Then I'm going to show a couple books from my video that I just put out that has the giveaway, but I'm not going to show all of them. This is one of them. This was a book that I'd been trying to get for a really long time, ever since I saw it, and I finally pulled the trigger on it. And that was this Startling Comics number 49, the Alex Schomburg Bender cover. So if you're a fan of Futurama, a lot of people think that Bender was based on this character, and it just seems like it has to be. At least there had to be something in the subconscious of the creators, at least, because it's just so similar. And this is by many considered to be the top Alex Schomburg airbrush cover, and I am one of those people that also says that. So there are some other great Alex Schomburg airbrush covers, but I think this is the best one. But part of that is because it fits in with that current like cultural thing, like Bender, Futurama and all that too. It just makes it all that more interesting. And this one 2.5, but the colors are fantastic, which is a big selling point for me on it. Then the other one I thought I would show that I picked up recently was another Alex Schomburg, which is this one here, which is All Select Comics number 1, which is one of those that by many consider it to be the top cover for the big three. So the big three from Timely are Captain America, Human Torch, and Submariner. Those are the three big heroes of that time period, that were selling all their books for them. And All Select number 1, where they are, fighting the Nazis, fighting Hitler. And just he would draw them larger than life on the cover. A lot of times you'd see Submariner like lifting up boats, or the size of bridges, and that's similar here, where you've got these characters just huge on the cover. And but colors are fantastic on it, a 5.0, and was finally again decided to pull the trigger on this one, and this kicked a bunch of books off my, my keeper list. Both of those did, and so that's why it's been cut down quite a bit over the last few months. But I've got a couple comments and questions here, and so we've got Eric Chang says, is the total value growing for your keepers, lowering in numbers, increasing in values? I think it is actually growing some. I generally, that's generally what I'm watching with it. That's a big reason for it, is I have my spreadsheet that has the total value of my inventory, you know, for the comic sale business, which also includes my keeper list, because the keeper list, they are books that are, quote, you know, not for sale. But if somebody came and said like, hey, I'll give you, you know, some massive number, they can become for sale. I talked about that in that last video, where a lot of those books that I traded to get, I did that big 5 books for 50 trade, and 4 of those books and were on my keeper list. But because the trade gave me enough value out of them, I decided I would do it. And so there's always something that can pull that book away, but it's just not something I'm actively trying to sell. But I mean, as my inventory grows, I don't have like a set percentage I try to keep the keeper list, but I would say as my inventory grows, as the business grows, the value of the keeper list tends to kind of grow accordingly. But yeah, I do still, I try to keep that under control, because if a book isn't up for sale, you know, on the business side of things, if a book isn't up for sale, it's not actively, you know, I'm not actively using that money. And so it is something I have to think about whenever I'm putting a book on that keeper list. Let's see how that one is a keeper. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not sure what that one means. See how that one is a keeper. Oh yeah, yes, yeah. I mean, it's just, yeah. It's, some of these are going to be very like they'll be very difficult to end up letting go of. If when I ultimately do, I'm sure I will at some point. I'm always looking for something, but sometimes it might be an upgrade. You know, like the Startling 49 is a book I've always wanted to get, and so, you know, I might be looking for an upgrade or something like that for it. Let's see. Yeah, my keeper list keeps growing. Maybe a sign of hoarding. I mean, that's what I mean, honestly, that's what I'm kind of trying to prevent, because I like I said before, I've had it where they've grown to, you know, it had grown to 100 books, and it kept getting bigger, and it's because I wasn't wanting to cut anything, and so I finally started making those, I call them like hard decisions. And I had a question on how I decide which ones to cut, and it's a combination of things, but generally it's just pitting the books against one another and deciding which one I want more, and then just doing that over and over and over again until I have whichever ones are left. And so that's generally how I've done it. I mean, it's definitely not all value. I have some books on there, like my Okajima pedigree book is not anywhere near the value of some of these books, but I just know how hard that book is to replace. You know, a book from an era when, during World War II, when she was in the camp in the US. And so that's one that I know is extremely difficult to replace. And so even though the value isn't necessarily as high as some of these others, it's on that keeper list. Let's see. Yeah, thanks again, everybody, for joining the chat. Got a bunch of comments. I'm just trying to go through and see if there's any more questions before we show the live stream and or show the live auction. And yeah, hey Mike, what's up? Thanks for joining. And then, what are your thoughts on that Pep 36 that was up for sale? Saw it and instantly thought of you. Actually, that was, I wanted to actually kind of start showing stuff before these Peps hit, but they've already come up. And because there were a lot of Pep Comics that came up for sale in this auction. I mean, a lot of like mid 40s. If you're not familiar with Pep Comics, it's basically where Archie started. That's the main thing it's known for. Pep Comics number 22 is Archie's first appearance, and then he appears in the stories for quite a while, and then they had his first cover appearance, which might have been that 36. I don't remember exactly. Let me see. Let me jump back, because there's so many that were in this one, and a lot of really obscure ones. Let's see here. Yeah, the Pep 36 was the first Archie cover, and it went for 2,640. What did I think it would go for? I thought it would go for 2,800. Its prior record in grade was 2,100, so it's still a record. So it was a solid sale. It was definitely one that I had been planning on watching, but that's the other good thing about the live streams for me is it distracts me from from bidding on stuff, because I've been trying to. I mean, with all these bigger books I've been adding lately, I've been trying to dial back some of my purchases just a little bit to get some money back so I can buy things again. All right. I'm going to share my screen, and then I was going to go over some of these. Let's see here. Some of these big sales that have happened already tonight. It's being difficult. All right. I think it's this one. Add to stream. There we go. All right. So this is that, if you're not, so this is the Heritage Live, or these Heritage auctions. I always like to do these live streams during these auctions, just because it gives something that you can actively talk about, and you can see some pretty cool books, especially. And so with Heritage, they do a auction every week. I'm not sponsored by Heritage or anything like that. It's just, I watch a lot of these Heritage auctions, but they do one of these auctions every week. Sunday is the Golden Age, Monday is the Silver Age, and Tuesday is Bronze and Modern. So if you're interested in any of those ages and that kind of thing, that's when you want to come and check them out. And oh, hey, and thank you very much for the super chat, Collecto6. And make sure to go follow him on Instagram. He has an incredible collection, just an incredible collection. So it's like every time I get a book that I think I'm like, oh, it's so great, and then his is like 3 grades higher than mine or something. So yeah, incredible collection. Make sure to go follow him on Instagram. But yeah, so a couple of the really big sales that already happened tonight. This was the first one. This sale, I mean, I definitely dropped some curse words when I saw this. Like this one blew my mind. So $12,000 for this Criminals on the Run, Volume 5, Number 2. It's the Mile High Pedigree 8.5. I checked. I think there's only 2 copies on Census. That doesn't necessarily mean a book is rare. It can just mean that a book hasn't been graded. And this one, I mean, 12,000, because when I looked at the history for it, it only had one prior sale. So if we go to Criminals on Number 2, and it was like 16 years ago, something like that. So Volume 5. So and this is GPA, if you're not familiar. It's one of the tools I often use. But so there was a 1948 release that was Volume 4, and a 1949 for Volume 5. This is that book that sold 16 years ago, 8.5, $418. Just sold for $12,000. That is a pretty stellar return on your investment for that book. And like I said, I think it's only 2 on Census. They usually have the Census numbers down here. Yeah, so only 2 on Census. There's an 8.5 and a 5.0. But it's one of those where I don't know if that means the book is actually rare, or if there just aren't that many of them that are graded. Because I mean, it doesn't seem like it would be all that rare of a book. I think it's 1950, 1949. Yeah, it's 1949. It's not like that super early pre-World War II or World War II era or anything like that. It is a cool cover. I mean, great colors and everything. It's from one of the top pedigrees, the Mile High Pedigree. But wow, $12,000. That one blew my mind. The other one that really surprised me tonight was this one. So this was Crime Mysteries Number 4, pretty wild cover. So you can see something a little bigger here. So you've got this I can't tell if it's a blood transfusion. Like, are they taking blood? I assume they're putting blood into her. But I mean, a 6.0, there are a lot of copies that are graded, or not a lot, but there are definitely copies that are graded higher. There was a Crippen 8.5. Yeah, that's the top one. Crippen 8.5 that went for 12,000, but that's top of Census. With top of Census, you get some weird things happening, because if you look at this one, if we look at like for me, I thought this book would go for, what was my estimate? I thought that book would go for 3,200. That's where I had that book. estimated, and it went for 6,000. So Crime Mysteries was at number 4. So we've got Crime Mysteries number 4. And so here you can see that big sale for the Crippen, $12,000. But then you've got a 6.5 in 2021 that went for 3,162. We had a 4.0 that went for in October of last year for 1,560. So I mean, a 6.0 going for $6,000. I mean, that's a big number. So I felt like that was a really, really solid, strong sale for that one. Another one that had a strong sale was this Captain America 36. You do not see this book come up for sale very often. It's where you've got Captain America and Bucky flying over this car and pulling Hitler out of the car. And this one had a huge sale in the Promise collection. I mean, I don't remember what it was. It was like 150 or 180,000. Let me see. And I think that brought a lot of attention to that book. So Captain America, number 36. And so we've got, the Promise collection, 200,000, 204,000, June of 2021. And so that seems to me like that sale happened and it really triggered some massive sales for this book in the lower grades. And so this one, we had a 0.5 that went for 2,700, which basically tells you like just to get into that book now is like $3,000. Then you had a 3.0 going for 12,600. I estimated this 1.5 would go for 5,000, and it went right around there. But I mean, it's a nice presenting 1.5. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some spine splitting or something like that. But yeah, nice presenting 1.5. And one of the books from the Captain America run, I do not see come up for sale all that often. The other one that had a pretty strong or solid sale was this classic cover, Archie number 50, the classic Betty cover, 3.5 for 1,500. This wasn't a record. The record for this one is, I think it's 1,550. But I thought this one, based on recent sales, would go for around 1,350 and went for 1,500. So a strong sale for that Archie number 50 as well. Let's see. So what if the Heritage AI auction announcer gains consciousness? I don't know. We better watch out then. I feel like, we'll be in trouble then if that happens. Might just start making up fake bids. That's my thought too, Eric. The risky if a higher grade comes out, because it's the Mile High, and so it is very typically the Mile High ends up being the top graded copy or one of the top graded copies, but it's usually somewhere in the 9s, and that one is just an 8.5, and the likelihood of another one coming up at some point that's a higher grade is not small. I would say there's a very good likelihood that you would see another copy pop up for sale at some point that's somewhere in the 9s. It's just seems like it would probably happen. And so that's a big fear to me when you're paying that huge premium for top of census, when the top of census isn't extremely high. If the top of census is like a 9.4 or a 9.6 in the golden age, I mean, the likelihood of another one coming up, like another Promise collection or whatever else coming up, is pretty low. But when you've got an 8.5, feel like the likelihood of something coming up is not all that small. So let's see here. So now we've got the I guess just got the auction run here. Let's see which books I've got that should be coming up. Because right now we are on lot 3172. We got through all the Peps. The next big one that I've got on my list is Startling Terror Tales number 11. So that is 13,189. So we can jump to that book, because that is a cool LB Cole cover, and it seems like, I mean, LB Cole had some really big numbers, like starting around 3 years ago, maybe 2 to 3 years ago, it started getting some really, really big sales for LB Cole books. And over the last, year, it seems like they've leveled off. But I've seen in the last couple of months, I've seen some big sales again for LB Cole. So I'm wondering if there's kind of like a little bit of a resurgence in some of these LB Cole books. Especially there were some during that pre-code horror sale that happened, maybe a month ago or so. There were some really big numbers for that. But Startling Terror Tales number 11 is this one here. So if you're not familiar with this book, this is there's a book called Suspense number 8, and I can show that one. So then I've got Go Collect here because I like Go Collect for things like showing images quickly because they have an image of most of these. So we've got Suspense Comics number 8. And so you can see you've got that same, that's a huge picture. You've got that same spider skull character on the front here. But then when you have the Startling Terror Tales, it's like a ramped up, more violent version of it. Some people like Suspense 8 more. Some people like Startling Terror Tales 11 more. I like the red background. I think I probably am more of a fan of the Startling Terror Tales. The other interesting thing with this copy is that this is the copy, and I don't think I've ever seen one of these come up for sale in at least a heritage auction. Maybe one has popped up somewhere else, but there were effectively 2 prints of this book. There's one where this is blue. And so if we go, I'm going to guess the example that's here is the blue one, because there are so few of the black ones. Yeah. So, so the blue is the second, basically where they fixed it. It was my understanding is it was originally intended to be blue the first time it got printed. And when I'm saying blue, I mean this like outline around the terror. This was intended to be blue, but it got printed as black. And so they fixed it, and then let's see here. So they fixed it, and then, it went to the blue, but you can see right here, it's this black color. So this one is definitely less common. I don't know how many are out there, one versus the other. I just know that I have almost never seen the black version come up for sale. So I think that's pretty cool to be able to see one of these copies sell. And a 4.0 is a very presentable grade for this book. I have one of the books that I traded away in that big trade was a 4.0 of this book. I have a 1.5 and a 1.8. I have 2 lower grade copies, and typically that's around where you find that book. Anywhere from a 1.0 to a 2.0, maybe a 2.5 is around where you'll find this book. A 4.0 and getting up into higher grades like a 6.5. The 6s, those can get very, very expensive. It's already an expensive book regardless, but it's one of these books that really ramps up quickly as you get to those much higher grades. Like if we take a look at that one. So Startling Terror Tale, it's the 1952 one. So you see like a 6.5 sold for 15,600, 7.0, 18,000, 4.0, the last sale was 5,280, which was actually the one that I bought. That was the one that I bought that I ended up trading. And then when you get down in the 2s, it's like a $3,000 book in the 1.5 to 2 range, that kind of thing. So yeah, you get a very, accelerated growth as you get up to these. And it's because the book is, let's see if it's going to, I think this is, yeah. So you can see how few there are up at these higher grades. So there's still only total universal 99, overall 110. But at 6.5, there's only 1, 2, 12, 14, 15 higher. And it's possible some of those are regrade attempts. That's one thing you always have to be aware of as well. When you're looking at the census. The census, I think, is generally relatively accurate. But especially when you get to books where half grades or full grades can have significant value differences, people are probably cracking them out and resubmitting, and generally not sending in the labels, because if you send in the label, CGC will remove it from the census. But I know, at least like myself, I'd be nervous sending in a label thinking they might look at it and then it's going to, potentially impact their decision on the grading. And so that's just something for me where I know I've heard from others as well that generally people are not sending their labels back in. So there can be some things that are off on the census there. But let's jump back to this, because yeah, that book's got to be coming up pretty soon, unless I missed it. Hopefully I didn't miss it. So it's 13,189. So 7 more books. So I saw a question on here. When you show graded comics on your videos, you always state some numbers at the end. What are those numbers? When I show graded comics on your video, can you clarify that? I'm not sure what you mean by that. I always state some numbers at the end. I don't know what that means. So if you can clarify that, I'm happy to answer it, but I don't know I don't know what you're referring to there. If you, I mean, it could be I'm talking about the census, which I was just mentioning, but I don't know for sure. Oh, that was one thing I thought would be interesting to show. Let's see if I can find one. There's something I saw recently. Well, so CGC just made they did like a little, yeah, they showed this. Yeah, so I thought this was really cool. So I noticed this change back in, and I want to make sure I don't miss that book come up for sale. All right, so we got five more. I noticed this change back in June. I noticed every book that I had submitted or that they had graded prior to June did not have this. After June, they did. And I was thinking about making a video about it. I just never got around to doing it. And because to me, I think the big value in this is that because now that what I mean by this is they're including images with every book that's graded now, at least non-moderns. Maybe they have it with everything now. I noticed it wasn't there with moderns, but I did notice it for everything that I submitted that was not in the modern tier. So I don't remember what the new names for the tiers are, but I think it's high value. What is it? High value, economy, and unlimited value, whatever the new tiers are. And I noticed all of mine that were in those tiers had these pictures. And so I think one of the big pluses there is that there have been some concerns about people making fake CGC books, where they're putting like some high dollar like fake inside of a CGC case that they've like cracked open and resealed. It's not like this is some super common thing, but at least if this is there for starting moving forward for all these books, if you go and check and you see that image and the image doesn't match what's in the case, it just gives you something else to confirm what is actually in that the book is actually what it's supposed to be. And so I think that is a great extra that they appear to be adding for free. Because I remember when I saw those appear to the because when you're actually I'll go back here. When you are, let me see. Yeah. So when you're actually submitting your books for grading, one of the options you have is for them to do like a high res scan of the book. And so I was like, oh crap, did I accidentally select that option? Because it's like $5 more per book. And I hadn't. And so that's when I noticed is they were just adding them for free. So that's just a really nice feature that I think is great that's there now, just to add some extra level of security with the books. Let's see. Yeah, perhaps send the labels back later after they've been graded, increase the value of your books, remove the ghost books from the census. Oh, let's see what this one ends up going for. So it's at 4,800. So again, if you're not familiar with CGC or with Heritage, this is having a solid sale. All right. So whatever that number is, I'll do that. Whatever that, so you can actually see it, whatever that number is, they add the 20% buyer's premium to it. So don't pay much attention to what the bid number is, like the 5,000 or whatever it is. You want to pay more attention to the bid plus BP with BP, because that's the number that is actually getting reported to GPA, to Go Collect, to any of these sources, and then that's what ultimately the person is paying for the book. I know a lot of people get worked up about the BP, and they think that it's like some big scam or something like that, and it's like that's what auction houses do. Auction houses in general have a buyer's premium or something like that they add on top of it. Like if you're going and like do some like car auction, something like that, they're generally adding a buyer's premium on top of that. And so it's the same thing here. And it's just, all you have to do is, wow, 7,800. This is a big sale. And I'm guessing a big part of it is that black label, because that is a rare variant for this book. Because this is definitely a record in grade, 8,400. This is a big number for this book. So this is a strong sale for this book. So we'll see. I mean, I'm guessing there's two people probably right now that are bidding back and forth, because now we got 9,000. We'll see if we'll get another one. So what I'm doing is basically I'm just adding 20% to whatever the bid is. So we'll see if someone's going to throw in one more. There's one more, 9,600. So yeah, very strong sale for this one. We'll see if it's going to get any more bids on it. But that is an incredible sale. I don't know if that will have any impact on the the other grades, because like I said, this is that rare black variant. I mean, over 10,000 now. So this is, what is that? 10,000, 10,800 now. Yeah, I mean, two people, I'm guessing, really, really want this book. Yeah, no, I've never accidentally bid on something, so I'm never too worried. I see your, yeah, so I see your comment. I had to disable live bidding, too risky. So I've never accidentally clicked on anything. This is another big one. This is a popular Steve Ditko electrocution cover. Let me see, what did I have the estimate on this one? I had this one estimated at, I had it at 2,100, and it's just under 2,100 right now. It's at 2,040. Its record in grade is 2,160. So we'll see. Yeah, so I mean, within $60. So yeah, technically didn't hit my estimate. My estimate, like I said, was 2,100. It went for, what was that? 2,040, but close enough. I mean, that's the type of thing where that's right in line with what I would expect. This one too, I love this cover. This is my favorite cover from this run. Strange Worlds #4 is generally the more popular cover, but Strange Worlds 5 is my favorite. I had that one going for $1,250 and it went for $1,200, so really right in line. But let's go back to this one. What did this sell for? $10,800 was the final bid for that one. That is a monster sale for that book. Let me see if there's anything else really cool coming up in just a moment so that I don't miss it. And then we can come back and talk about that one a little bit more, because that is a big sale. And I saw your comment, consume the living to bid. That is, I'm generally not a person that is going to be setting, new records on books, because I've talked about this before. I'm generally approaching this from the business side of things, whether I'm buying it as a keeper book or not. I'm always thinking about what my exit strategy is if I need to with that book. And so setting a massive record like that on a book, when you're selling it, you usually have fees and you have sales tax and all this kind of stuff. So you've got to think about, what it's going to cost you to sell the book. Now, if you're planning on keeping that book, for 20 years, who cares? It doesn't really matter. But for me, I tend to be a little bit shorter term. Especially because I'm constantly trying to improve my keeper list. And so even books that I had 2 years ago, I had somebody ask a question about that. I had my top 50 books video that I put out maybe 2.5 years ago. And somebody was watching the channel and they asked, how many of those do you still have? And so I went through and checked, and of those 50, I still had 4. One of them is actually the Startling Terror Tales 11 1.8 that I have. But that's kind of like my turnover, because I'm constantly trying to improve my keeper list, improve that collection, as well as just the inventory that I'm turning over. So the likelihood of me keeping something for that really long term is a lot lower. Now that would change maybe if I got some mega key like a Batman 1 or, Detective Comics 31 or something like that. This was one of the other books I was watching. This is always a fun cover. It's one of these Archie Good Girl Art type covers, Susie number 56. I had this one going for, what was my estimate here? I had estimated at 1,000. Looks like it went quite a bit below that. So maybe somebody got a good deal on that one. So someone got that for $780. I think that was probably a good deal. Now it was a record in grade, but with Golden Age books, the thing that's more important is generally what have other books sold around it. You're not going to have books in the same grade sell all that often. And so to me, you can't really look at, this book sold for, $500 and now it sold for $2,000. If that sold for $500 10 years ago, it's a record, but how did it do compared to other grades that sold more recently? That's generally what I'm looking for. Now, it does give you that long-term view of how those books might be performing, but still, to me, like how it's performing in the moment, I'm looking at other grades. Now, there are a ton of LB Cole books. This is one of them. A ton of LB Cole books that have been coming up for sale in this auction and in recent auctions. This is a huge sale for this book. The prior record was 1,020. I thought this book would go for $950. and it just sold for 1,400. So that was a very strong sale for that one. Let's see, this one here I had at 550 and it's already at 720. I mean, that's what I was talking about a little bit earlier. I've been seeing big numbers for LB Cole. I don't know if there's like a new crop of people that got in and got introduced to LB Cole and have really started to try, picking up some of his books. This one has popped up a few times recently. It's one of the Devil covers, not my favorite of the Devil covers that he did. The best one in my opinion is, let's see, so how did that one do? Sorry, I had it going at 1,550 and it went for 1,560. So really right in line. And that's one of those that's a little easier to predict because like I said, we've had a number of sales recently. But I think Suspense Comics number 11 is his best Devil cover. Some people might say Mass Comics number 2. They're both great, but I like Suspense 11. But yeah, let's see how this one's doing. Yeah, I had this one going at 600. It's at 660. So just in general, across the board, these LB Cole books are doing pretty well. This is the first one I feel like is underperforming right now, at least. I had it going for 500, sitting at 384 right now. And that's one of the other things I always like to talk about when we're talking about comic market, comic sales. You really can't look at just one book. You have to look at multiple books and get a broader picture, kind of like Mickey does with his market videos, where he's taking 100 books from each era. It's similar to what I do when I'm looking at these Heritage Weekly auctions. I'm not looking at one Golden Age book and how that one's performing that week. I'm looking at 60 or 70 Golden Age books that sold this week and how did they do versus my estimates. And that gives me an approximation of the strength of the market week to week. But let's see if there's anything coming up real soon, because I see a number of questions in here. So this one here, you have to pay attention to BP. First time I bought a book for 6,500 and ended up 8,100. Yeah, you definitely do need to pay attention to the buyer's premium. 6,500 would have jumped up to 7,800, and then I'm guessing you had sales tax as well, and that's what pushed you up to 8,100. But yes, you definitely have to pay attention to that. I mean, the thing with Heritage, at least, is they do, when you're bidding, they do make it very clear what that buyer's premium is going to be. You have to be more cautious on some other sites, like I believe ComicConnect. They tell you, like this one has 15% buyer's premium, but it does not show you that when you're bidding. And so that's something that you need to really watch for when you are on certain sites, because not everybody makes it as crystal clear what you're actually bidding. And so it's just something to really be aware of. The other thing that's tricky with ComicConnect is that sometimes they have the buyer's premium and sometimes they don't. It's that when you're a seller, you have the option. They give you options of how you want to sell the book. If you want to have it as the seller's premium or if you want to have it as the buyer's premium, it comes out of your pocket either way, but it's just kind of like how you think your book might do the best. And so it's a little trickier on that one because it's not always the same. It depends on which book you're bidding on. Whereas at least with Heritage, it's always the same. The buyer's premium might be different depending on the actual auction item. It's not necessarily consistent between coins and video games and posters and comics. A lot of the times it's pretty similar, but they do at least give you that information each time. Yes, I watch past videos where you show graded comics back from CGC. And before you put it away, you quickly state a series of numbers. I want to know what you mean by the numbers. I don't know what that means. I'm really sorry. It could be my grade estimates. I'm not sure. I really don't know what that means. If somebody else in the chat, that's watched, that might be able to help me out here to help figure out what that question is about, I'd appreciate it. Because yeah, I'm not sure what numbers I would be referring to. Normally, if I'm getting books back from CGC, the things that I'm referencing are my grade estimate and then the grade that I actually received. And so that's typically what I'm talking about. And so that's just basically me practicing every time that I'm submitting books to see if I'm getting the grades back that I think they should get. And what I try to do is every time I'm submitting, I'm trying to learn from that. That's my big takeaway whenever I'm sending in books, is that I don't necessarily know everything about grading or how certain defects are going to affect a grade. And so I treat it as a learning experience each time. And I do try to be a little conservative, because I've had people comment on that where they, they'll think that like, oh, like, CGC has given me like too high grades or things because the grades are above my estimates. And I do generally try to be a touch on the conservative side when I'm sending in my books, usually a half grade to a full grade. And the reason is that a lot of times that's determining whether it's worth it for me to send in the book. Like, I need it to hit the grade that I think it's going to be, for it to be worthwhile to send in. If it does a little better, great. But if it does worse, probably should have just kept it raw, and then, not spent the time and money and everything getting it pressed and cleaned and graded. So there are different things that are going into at least my decision making when I'm sending in a book for grading. So let's see here, see what books are, see what the next big one is that's coming up. There's a vault. Okay, so 13223, so about 11 books. There's a Vault 415 that I thought looked pretty cool. Then there's a Voodoo 15 that is a great cover, and I'm really interested to see what that one ends up going for, because one hasn't sold in quite a few years. So let's see here. Let's see. So PBA had a buyer's premium of 25%. Yes. Yeah. That's another one. That's an example of one. PBA, I think Hakes also has a buyer's premium, and I don't think PBA tells you, like, they don't show you the buyer's premium. They when you're agreeing to bid, they make sure that they tell you, like, you have to know we're going to add 25% to this. But I'm pretty sure when you're actually bidding that you don't see something that says, like, if you bid 100 that it's 125, or if you bid 1,000 that it's actually 1,250. And so you really need to be aware what you're doing on these different auction houses, because they all have different rules, all have different percentages, all this kind of stuff. And so that was something we talked quite a bit about in one of the prior live streams. It was about the Collector's Comics, Dave with Comic Book Investments, the other YouTube channel that I'm guessing a lot of you watch, because I know I watch his channel. It's a great channel. But he does auctions through his site. And for now, at least, I believe it's still 0% fees. From my understanding, once he builds up enough of a, like a solid reputation with it and everything, he'll start adding some fees in. But I think it's 0% fees right now, which you can't beat. Like, I mean, from what I've seen, a lot of the books that sell in there go for pretty much market prices. And so if you think about that, like, if you have a book that was going to sell on, say, Comic Link, which has a 10% seller's fee that you have to pay, versus Collector's Comics, if they both sell for the same price, you just made 10% more money selling it on his platform. And so now it's going to depend. There are certain books that probably sell better in different places. But that's something that you really do need to think about when you're choosing where to sell is, yeah, some places might get bigger numbers, but if their fee is substantially more, you've got to get that bigger number just to make it even worthwhile. So yeah, always something to think about when you're selling your books. Can you think of any scenario where a buyer's premium versus a seller's premium would change the sale price? No. It's a mental thing. I feel like you're kind of hoping that somebody isn't going to notice the buyer's premium when you choose that option on ComicConnect. that's my thought, because on ComicConnect, because like I said, it's not quite as clear. And so I think you're probably hoping, like what somebody mentioned before, that they didn't catch that there was that buyer's premium. You're probably hoping for that. And then you're really, you're effectively taking the buyer's premium out of your fee, like where you as the seller you're not really even having to pay anything. Yeah, it went for more and you're not getting all of that. But if you thought it would go for 6,000 and then somebody, instead of bidding 5,000, bid 6,000 because they didn't catch the buyer's premium, all the better for you as the seller. Right. So That's what I think. That's my conspiracy theory on that one. But no, I mean, in general, it shouldn't really impact the final sale. The only reason might be, like some people don't like the buyer's premium. Maybe you lose some bidders when they see that. And so you could have maybe some people are like, I only want to bid on ComicLink because ComicLink just does the seller's fee, or I only want to bid on eBay because eBay just does the seller's fee. Even though the end result is ultimately the same, you pay whatever the final number is. The mental aspect of it, just might make some people not want to bid on sites that have buyer's premium. I don't know if there are certain places where it's a maybe it's a like a legal requirement in the state, where you can only do buyer's premiums or you can only do seller's premiums. I have no idea about that. It could depend on where things are located and whatever regulations are there for auctions. Let's see. Got any more? Yeah, so you said it is still 0 fees. Yep. Yeah. So I don't know at one point if he's going to be adding fees. At Dave with Comic Book Investments, if he's going to be adding fees, but yeah, it sounds like it is still 0 fees. So these romance books have, here's a pretty big book. This is actually, if you're not familiar with this run, this is actually the first issue where it's called Vault of Horror. So it's the first issue of the title, formerly known as War Against Crime, and ties with Crypto Terror as the first EC horror comic. So in any grade, and you can see here, this is a 0.5. It's currently at $420, which honestly feels kind of cheap. But in any grade, this is an expensive book. 1.0s are often going for $700 to $1,000. But I didn't check why that was a 0.5. I don't know what it was missing. But here's that Vault 15. I had this one estimated at $250, and it's right around there right now. Looks like it's at what, 228. Nope, now it's at 240. So I mean, yeah, it's going to be right around wherever this book that's going to end. There are a few issues from EC that have the hands coming up out of the ground. I always like those covers always look good, but they definitely they reuse that theme a number of times throughout the title. All right, yeah, now we're at 264, so it's above my estimate. It did have a bigger sale. It had a $320 sale. That's its record, but I based on other sales that have occurred in other grades, I thought this book would go around 250. It's still going. It's at 300 now. Nate, we got Mickey, Swaghouse Comics. Make sure to go. I think I've got some back here. Yeah, here we go. Go buy his book. So I know he still has. At least I saw he still had, I think, like 20 copies left. I don't know if they sold out last night in your sale, Mickey. If we've got any left, but yeah, awesome cover. This is actually my favorite cover from the run. I think, or from the print. There's something about it just really, I think it's like a menacing cover. I really liked it. So yeah, make sure to go if you haven't picked up one of the books, Sanity, Rise of the Occult from Swaghouse Comics. That's one of them. So that's one of the covers, and that's my favorite one. And that was one I know he had some left, at least last night. But yeah, feel free to add into the chat if those are all sold out now, because then you can't get them. And but you still have cover A. Let's see. So with CBCS now grading mags and CGC upgrading theirs, do you think there will be any movement in that market? I think it's possible that you could start having some movement in the magazine market. Now, it's all about if they can actually get that throughput. Actually, there was a Voodoo cover I won. Okay, 2 issues. So this is a big sale, I think, for this one. Voodoo 2. It's up at $15.60. But yeah, I think one of the big things that hurt magazines for a long time was the turnaround time at CGC was just terrible. Like 2 years, a year and a half for grading. I mean, that's wild. Like that is, and those cases were awful. Like they always felt kind of flimsy and everything. I have gotten a couple books that have been in those new cases, and they are much nicer. They feel just like the normal CGC comic case, a lot more clear, a lot more sturdy. So yeah, that I think it could, because if people can get more throughput, then you're going to have more of them out there, and you're going to have just, because I think people, they like presenting them in the cases. I mean, it's like with me, I like having comics in the cases. I think they just look nice for presentation purposes. And I think the same will likely be true with magazines. So I have heard, somebody commented on a recent video that because I sent in a whole bunch of Vampirella magazines, and they're with my presser right now. They aren't at CGC yet. This is the book, Voodoo number 15. So 4.5. I had no idea what this one would go for, because one hadn't sold in like 3 years, but this is a big number. I didn't think it would go this high. I think this is almost double. And so, yeah, this is a really strong sale, but I think this is such a cool cover. This is, I mean, look at that thing, just a crazy cover. And so I think it deserves to have this kind of bigger number. It does. And so I don't disagree with it. I wasn't sure what that one would end up going for, because one hadn't sold in so long. Because let's see, that was, it says Voodoo 15, because I'm pretty sure it was 4 years since the last one sold. So, okay, it was in grade. It was for around grade. So 2019. So it was 3 years since these lower ones. But yeah, I mean, just like a book that doesn't come up for sale hardly ever. I mean, what's the census on it? Only 21 universals, 23 overall. That's the type of book where when it comes up for sale, you're going to get some bids, because people are, they know it's their chance to get it. Let's see, how did those do? Because there are a couple early Walt Disney's Comics and Stories. There's number 5 and a 6.5, which is an incredible grade for that book. I had it at 950, and it looks like it went for 930. So right in line. Then this one I had going for 350. I feel like it's going pretty cheap right now. It's a decent looking copy. So 234. Yeah, I'll throw a bid in. But somebody already outbid me. So it's sitting at 240 right now. But I think this is cool. I mean, like, you don't have too many of those World War II covers. And this is a World War II Uncle Sam buy war bonds cover. And so I feel like this is one of the ones, this issue 46 is a little undervalued in the Walt Disney Comics and Stories run. It always seems like it should go for more to me, and it just doesn't. And I think that type of thing, I think eventually it catches up, and maybe you get some bigger numbers. Yes, Eric, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I feel like if he's shipping all that stuff out and he's not getting anything for it, I mean, it seems like it is a ton of work, and he's done quite a few of those auctions now. I wouldn't want to do that. I mean, it's a lot of books, and so that's a lot of shipping and everything. So yeah, but I mean, it seems like it's working well so far. It seems like he's getting bigger and bigger auctions each time, and people are using it for bigger and bigger books. So ultimately, I think he's probably thinking the long game on it, and hopefully it pays off for him. So I'm a comic collector since the 1960s, and it's been hard to hold on to comics without some moron relative throwing them out. I mean, that was, I mean, even now when people know comics can have a lot of value, it still seems to happen. It really does still seem to happen that people will throw them out either way. Can you tell me how much shipping is from Heritage to the US? So it depends on how much you buy. Generally, the minimum tends to be about $25. And so if you're buying one book, and now if you're buying a really expensive book, it ends up being more because there's going to be some insurance in it. But Heritage shipping compared to the other auction houses is actually very fair. Like when I bought from Comic Link shipping is expensive. They charge a ton for their shipping. I think I bought like 4 books and the shipping was like $170 or something like that. Whereas as Heritage, generally, if I'm buying a few books, my shipping per book comes out to around $12 to $15, somewhere in that range. Here's a really cool cover. This is this Weird Chills number 2. I had this one going for $11.50. It's sitting at $1,080 right now. So it would need a couple more bids to hit that, but it's close enough. It's one of those again where it's close enough, but yeah, pretty creepy cover. You've got these little gremlin things like hanging on this guy's face. And 1,200 now. So it's tied with its record, because its record in grade was 1,200. So solid sale, strong sale for that one. Yep. Okay, no more bids. So yeah, so went for 1,200. Then we've got so I picked up one of these recently. Not this one exactly, but there are these 3 covers done by Will Ekgren. And I got a little history on it because somebody was talking to me about it when I talked about it in my video. And basically, I think that this was like an artist that just had these basically these images out on the, like he was selling them either in a gallery or out on like kind of like on the street. And somebody came by and they I think it was maybe Matt Baker. I think it was Matt Baker, and saw them and asked if they could use them on the covers of these comics, and they did, and they are some of the just the coolest, most unique covers out there. It's like all this intricate line work that makes the cover, and this is a strong sale, I think, for that book. So Weird Horrors number 7. Let me see what I had it estimated at. Yeah, I had it at 800, and that just went for, what did I go for? 1,320. Here's another big book, Weird Mysteries number 5. This is a huge book. Now this is restored. It's got quite a bit of restoration. It's a B3. It's also trimmed, but that shows how in demand that book is, because that still went for $2,760. What did I think that would go for? I had it estimated just at 2,000. And it's a tough one because when you're trying to estimate what a restored book is going to go for, it can be difficult. But that shows how strong the sales are in that book, or the demand is for that book in general. Because we can, just like look at that thing. That is a wild cover. Like that is one of the more gruesome covers that is out there from the Golden Age. But let's jump back to the chat a bit. But yeah, that might not be a bad idea for one of the issues, Mickey. You like have some hands coming up out of the ground. So I love displaying my bigger slabs, but I can't find any protective bags for those. No, I don't have a recommendation for that. I don't know where to get them. I always I end up trying to reuse the ones whenever I buy one from Heritage. Sometimes Heritage doesn't even send them with let me think. Do they always have the bags? I don't know even if Heritage always has the bags, but you get them from CGC and then you just try to hold on to those because I don't know exactly where to pick those up. I don't think there's a Mylar option for them, but I agree that's the biggest struggle with the magazine size books is getting plastic bags to protect them and the storage for them. The storage is more of a hassle. I have to store them on a shelf versus a box of some sort. I mean, there might be boxes out there that can hold them, but I don't have enough magazines to justify buying a full box, even if there is one. That seems like that is a huge sale. This Weird Mysteries 12. What did I have that going for? I had that at 1,200. Wow, that is a big sale. It is at $2,880 already. 3,120. Man, that is a huge sale. It's a creepy cover. Yeah, that is a monster sale. 3,120. Wow, that was a big one. I'm gonna bold that one on my spreadsheet there. Yeah, that is a big one. And then they have this. I think they have almost the full run of Weird Tales of the Future. I don't think they have 4 or 7. Maybe they. What is this one? Do they have? Oh, okay, they do have 4. Let's see. Did they have 7? Let me check. No, they don't have 7. They have 6 and then 8. But let's see. How did that number 1 do? 690. I had it going for 500, and the record was 593. So that was a strong sale. Number 2, I had this one going for 1,900, and it's a little over 2,000 already. So these are getting some strong sales too. This is a cool run. There's I would call a couple duds maybe in this run, but most of them are pretty amazing covers. The only one I really don't care much for is number 4. This is one of the coolest covers in the run, though. issue number 3. What did I have this one for? I had this one going for 600 as a 0.5, and it looks like it might get there. You can tell there are a couple people bidding on this one because it's one of those books where just to get into it is already really expensive. Well, let's see. I feel like that was a pretty good deal. So that one went for $528. That was still a record. The prior record was $454, but I thought it would go for $600. This one, I mean, this one doesn't appeal to me as much as the others. The others, I don't know. There's just something about this one that doesn't feel as polished, maybe. But this is a cool one. I really like this cover. We've got the giant alien peeping on the lady in the spaceship. But let's see. So a 2.5, number 5. I had this one going for 1,100. It went just under, so 1,020. And then issue number 6, I had this one going for 600, and it's already at 660. Now 720. So yeah, I mean, in general, some pretty solid sales so far for this. Let's see. I just got a magazine submission back, Vintage Fast Track, back in 20 days. That's incredible. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. You know, that's what they on their site. I think they say 25 days, something like that, 25 or 30 days, which it used to be 280. I mean, so yeah, if they've got it coming back that quick, I'll be really happy about it. This one's going real cheap right now. I'll bid on that. Okay, we're getting a couple more bids in there because I had this one. My estimate was 1,100. It's had a record of 1,440. All right, it's starting to get up where outside of where I wanna bid, but still feels like a pretty good price. This is one of the more like horror specific covers. I mean, it's a pretty violent cover. You know, basically his heart has been ripped out of his chest and he's going to go try to pick it up. But it looks like we probably got a couple people bidding back and forth on this copy. But yeah, this book in almost any grade seems to at least sell for right around $1,000 or more. It has that, certain books have that kind of like that buy-in price, you know, where it's like regardless of grade, it's going to cost you about this. And that one just went for what, 990. So yeah, right around that $1,000 point. This is also a pretty big book. This Who Is Next, number 5. It is too cheap in my opinion right now, so I'm gonna bid. All right, we got a couple bids in there. But yeah, because I thought this one would maybe go for hit around 1,100. But at 900, I don't know. I'm gonna let it slide. I'm trying not to buy stuff right now, so I'm gonna let it slide. But that, I feel like that was a really solid price for that book. Let's take a look at that one. So yeah, 840. You know, Who Is Next, number 5. Not a book you see very often. I think it's a really low census count. Yeah, only 31 total, 29 universals. I don't remember who did the cover. George Russo's cover. But yeah, these I feel like some of these crime books, they could be something that ends up picking up some, because it's not quite the horror, but you have some pretty unique covers that are part of it. All right. There's a couple big books still coming up here, and one more. Let me see here. Yeah, this Witchcraft number 2. One of the coolest skull covers from the Golden Age, like hands down. This one right here, one of the coolest skull covers from the Golden Age. So this is a 2.5. It's brittle pages, which I wasn't sure how that would do on Heritage. A lot of times brittle page books do not perform all that well on Heritage, but this one's going pretty strong. Its prior record was 920. I thought it would go for 900, sitting at 1,200 right now. It is a nice looking copy though, brittle pages or not. I mean, at a 2.5, that is a great looking book. But super cool skull cover. And it's just like, I don't know if there's any other skull covers out there that are like that have this black skull on the cover. And so just a really unique one. And then you've also got Witchcraft 5, which is just a cool, good girl art cover. And then you've got all this, just like this floor of bones that she's running through. This was a tough one to predict because this is a high grade for this book, a 6.5. I thought it would go for around 2,200. What did it sell for? 2,160. So right in line with where I thought it would sell. There's one more really big book that's coming up tonight, and it's just in two more. It's this one right here, this Amazing Stories, August 1928, which is the first appearance of Buck Rogers. That is not him on the cover. I believe I've heard that is not him on the cover, but it is the first appearance of Buck Rogers. That is not something you see come up for sale very often. I mean, 1928. I mean, it's almost 100 years ago, and that was one of those ones. If you watch Alex the Comic Hoarder, he found a copy in one of those like antique malls. Like someone just had one in a stack of books when he was going through and looking for stuff, and so that's got to be one of the best finds ever, is picking up a copy of that in an antique mall. But let's see. So that one should be just a couple more. Let's see. Are there any more comments? Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, the Amazing Stories pulp is always super interesting. Yep. Yeah, that's what I feel too. Is it just me, or do you end up patting yourself on the back for your math skills when you figure out like 3 bids and BP in a row? I mean, I'm pretty good at math, so I don't think too much about it. But yeah, I think it's kind of funny. Yeah, no, that's funny. Which Witchcraft cover is better? I think 2. I think 2 is a better cover. I like that giant skull on the cover. It's just that big central image. I don't like the art on 5 quite as much. I think it is a cool cover regardless, but I like 2 better. I mean, this is Who Is Next underrated. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it's when you have books that are that uncommon that just don't come up for sale hardly ever. It's hard to really say if they're underrated or not, because they're not going to come up for sale to really, determine if or be able to change value all that fast. And so to me, that's something where if it's something you think is a cool cover, then that's one of the things that I'm generally using when I'm trying to decide if I want to pick something up or not. Cause I generally think if I think something's cool, other people probably think it's cool too. And so I just kind of use that logic when I'm looking at especially Golden Age. Cause when you're talking about silver, bronze, and modern, cool covers don't really bring value all that much. I mean, it tends to be appearances, like key appearances, because there's enough of them. And there's so many that you can get those key appearances and it still remains relatively affordable. Whereas in the Golden Age, first appearances are so absurdly expensive that it's something where you kind of like by default have to move on to other reasons for collecting the books. And cool covers is the biggest one. I mean, it's like because first appearance is like, yeah, it's like, oh, I'd love to have a Tech 27, but I don't have, $1 million to spend on a comic book. So I'm not going to get a Tech 27, but maybe I can get a really cool Joker cover or something, or a really cool Batman cover. And I can, it might cost me a couple thousand or a few thousand, but that's something that I can manage. Whereas, the first appearances are just insane. I feel like that one went kind of low. Cause I had that estimated at 4,000, went for 3,360. Now the thing is, I felt like that one was not graded correctly. I'm usually like, I feel like the grading is for the raws is pretty decent. But this one was at a 5.5, and I'll bring this book up. I mean, you could have stuff like this at a 5.5, that's fine. But then when you start looking at the other things, like the tear at the bottom, and then you start going along the spine, and you've got some pretty major creasing along the spine. I didn't think this book was a 5.5, and I priced accordingly. That's why I said it was a $4,000 book instead of a $6,000 book. Like tear up here, bigger, like a deep crease here. I didn't see this book as a 5.5. I saw it more as like a 4.0. And so I think that's how I priced it. And I think the most recent 4 or 4.0 was around 4,000. And so that's how I priced that book. These are also a little more difficult to price because they're massive. These are not books that are graded. And so they won't fit in the slabs. And so really one of the only ways to really price them is to look at prior sales on Heritage, because Heritage keeps all their sales forever. And so if you go, into Heritage and you search for Amazing Stories, August 1928, and past sales, you can see what the prior books have sold for. And that's really almost your only option, because even if one sold on eBay, that sale disappears in 90 days. And so it's such a rare, not super rare, but a pretty rare book. And so your likelihood of finding a past sale on eBay is relatively low. And so you kind of have to use Heritage past sales. And so you can't use something like GPA or Go Collect or one of those with a book like this. Some of the older comics look really bad. Do you think some of these bad condition comics will worsen over time? If you mean like they look like they're in very poor condition, I mean, that's all up to how you store them. Once you not necessarily locking it in the case, but like if you just say have it in a Mylar with either a full back or even better, like one of those plastic clear backing boards, and as long as you keep it in a temperature controlled area that doesn't have like a bunch of humidity or water or something, you're generally it's gonna pretty much stay the same condition, at least within human lifetimes. So if you're maintaining it like that, then it'll be fine. If you're storing them up in an attic that's cycling between 30 degrees Fahrenheit and 80 degrees Fahrenheit every year constantly, and that's going to damage that book long term. But yeah, once you've kind of effectively locked it in a Mylar or in a slab, you're generally not going to have much more deterioration on that book. I mean, that's why you can see white page books from the 40s. I mean, there are white page books from the 40s. I mean, books that are in pristine condition from the 40s. And so if it's possible to retain those books in that condition for 80 years, as long as you're storing them properly, you can. One of the ways that the Mile High collection was kept so high grade is, one, being in Colorado. So you've got that dry mountain air, but also I believe he stored his books in cedar chests, which pull a lot of that moisture away and keep any bugs away and all of that. And so, there were things that he did, that Edgar Church did as a collector / hoarder that kept those books in that pristine condition. Yeah, Alex is just amazing at hunting. I agree. I mean, the stuff he finds, going out there into these, whether it's to the stuff that he finds, whether it's at like record stores, like that huge pre-code horror collection he found at that record store, or the stuff he finds at those auction, or not the auctions, there's the thing where he found that Amazing Stories, the antique malls, all that. Like he definitely, I mean, but you find that stuff putting in the time. So I'm sure he is putting in the time, when he is traveling or whatever, he is making sure to stop at those places, and that gives him those opportunities to find those books. I mean, if you're not checking, you're never going to find them. And I feel like he probably puts in a lot of time for that. Did I ever hear what the deal is with Comic Link being hacked during their last auction? I have no idea. All I know is that I went to go check how one of the auctions was doing, and the site was down. That's the only information I have. I have no idea. Like, I don't know if the hacking is just a rumor or if there's any truth to it. I have no information about that. And I don't know if we'll ever get any information about that. They might have to, if like people's information was actually at risk. That I don't know, though. Hey, congratulations on the PEP 36. We were talking about that earlier tonight. I think let's see. I thought I said that I think it went lower than I thought, so I felt like it was a pretty good price. Let's check it out. 13,145. Oh, but before I do that, one thing, I've noticed Heritage has been selling these like lots of old books lately. These aren't the really old ones, but those have been going for huge numbers. A lot of times when you filter the golden age day of sales by highest price to lowest price, those book lots, like they're like, whether it's first editions or, that kind of thing, those are going for like thousands and thousands of dollars. That has been a surprising addition that has had some really strong numbers with it. I don't know anything about old books though. So I mean, not comic books, but so yeah, let's see. So yeah, that Pep 36, what did it end up going for? Went for 2640. I had it estimated at 2800. So yeah, I think that, I mean, a little below what I thought that book would go for. And I think that's a cool book. I have missed out on this one a couple times where I wasn't paying attention when it came up for sale. It was in a prior Heritage auction and I should have bid on it, and it went a lot cheaper than I thought it would go for. But yeah, this is the, I think it's like the first full Archie cover. Cause so I think it's the first full Archie cover. Cause I believe technically the first Archie cover is, I think it's like Jackpot 3. Let me check, find out. Or is it Jackpot? Maybe I'm wrong. I thought it was one of the Jackpot issues. Yeah, this one. I think Jackpot 4. Because this is, what year is that? So that's because that's 1941. And so you have Archie on the cover, but it's just his face. And so this one is the first time you have like the full appearance of Archie. Now it's 1943, but that just shows you like how long it really took for him to get on the covers. I mean, for so long, especially, during World War II, like the focus was on, heroes like the Shield and that kind of thing. And so Archie didn't get as much focus until later on. But yeah, no, I think that is a great key. And that's because you don't get all that many keys for these Golden Age characters, whether it's first appearances or first covers. And those are some of the biggest ones. And so I think that's a cool pickup. And yeah, like I said, I had it estimated at 2,800, went for 2,640. So a little bit under my estimate. Yeah, I was watching the Exciting 60. I didn't, let's see what it sold for. I had it estimated at 1,200. So it's 13,045. It went for 1320. So went for 10% above my estimate. So strong sale. I think this is a great Schomburg cover too. People love the shark the shark covers, underwater shark covers, similar to Seven Seas #4. You got the underwater shark cover. But I think that is a great looking copy. I mean, a 7.5 and a solid sale. I mean, yeah, beat my estimate by 10% and set a new record. The record was 960 based on my notes, but I don't know when that actually happened. So let's take a look here. So that was in 2019. So the record was 4 years ago, 2019. Like I said, I had it going for 1,200 and it went for 1320. So solid sale for it. Mike says Heritage kind of overgrades on pulps at times. Yeah, I mean, I don't watch enough pulps to really know, and I don't consider myself an expert on pulp grading or any type of knowledge on pulp grading at all. I look at it from the perspective of how I would look at a comic, and to me, it didn't look like a 5.5. But usually you don't grade pulps the same way. Usually with pulps, I think usually it's like VG, fine, and very fine. It's much more broad on how I've seen them graded. Now I have seen more people more recently kind of like try to give them those like half grades like you get with comics. And since CGC, I think is planning on grading pulps coming up in the future pretty soon. So I imagine there's going to be that tighter, grading on it. but I think that's really going to determine, or going to kind of set the bar for it. Now I'm sure it's going to cause, where people are going to get upset and concerned and everything, where, just like how CGC does not grade the way Overstreet defines grading. I mean, so they do not grade the same, so if you're going into a CGC book expecting it to be graded the same as Overstreet, it's not. There are differences. And I imagine it'll be the same with how these are graded, but I don't know for sure. I am not an expert in that area at all. Let's see. Oh yeah. TJ Slabdragon says not yet, but pulp grading is coming from CGC. Yeah. Well, yeah, and Flexipotamus, that's what I said. I don't know. I just know that's the rumor mill I've heard, but I have no idea. All I know is that the site was down, and there could be all kinds of reasons that sites go down. Swaglass, Betty or Veronica, and why is it Veronica? I'm actually I'm Team Betty, but yeah, that's me. But I believe Archie ultimately picked Veronica, but I am Team Betty. Andy, I'm new to the channel. Damn, you are knowledgeable. Are you full-time dealer? Just curious how you're. I appreciate that comment. I am not a full-time dealer. I do consider myself a dealer, but it's something I do as like a part-time on the side thing. I think it's just, I really enjoy comics. And so I have put a lot of time into it. I got back into comics. So I collected as a kid. I think like a lot of people probably that are subscribed to this channel, that watch this channel, I collected as a kid. And so for me, that was in the 90s. And then I just went away from comics for probably around 20 years. And then I came back to it I started reading some around like 2012, 2011. I had a friend that I work with that he would give me books like The Walking Dead and Invincible and Why the Last Man, some more of the modern stuff to read that he thought I would enjoy. And so I was reading some of those, and which I've gotten way behind on, and I feel terrible because I have them here and I never keep up on the reading that he sent me. But then in like 2019, my brother, I think it was either late 2018 or early 2019, my brother came and visited, and he brought my childhood collection with him. And it just caused me to start going through it. And I started looking at stuff again. And that's when it's like, you have that like thing where you're like, I'm an adult. I have money now. Maybe I can go buy some of these comics that I couldn't afford when I was a kid, or that I always wanted when I was a kid. And so it started off that way. And I had started buying some then. And then I realized I needed to learn more about this stuff if I wanted to actually, one, not get taken advantage of. That's a big part of it, because I started buying on eBay, and I trusted people's grades when they sold stuff on eBay. And you learn relatively quickly that you cannot do that. You need to learn to grade. And if you're buying raws, if you're buying graded books, that's fine. And that can be a safe way to do it, to introduce yourself to some of those pricier books and keys or whatever. But I was buying some raws, and I was like, and I started looking into it. I was talking to my brother, and I was just learning that I was not getting the grades that I was expecting to get when people would ship them to me. And so that started to get me to start dig into grading and all of that. And then I realized that if I wanted to own or have a chance to own a lot of the books that I thought were really cool, I needed to start selling some, because I didn't win the lottery or anything like that. So I don't have unlimited money. And so in order to buy books, I started selling. And so then it just kind of ballooned from there. And, you find things that are interesting to you, and then you tend to be willing to spend the time on it. And, so for me, like, Golden Age has been a big part of that. I mean, I didn't know anything about Golden Age until probably around 2020. And that's when I just started diving into it a lot more. And, the big part of that was Instagram. I mean, part of it was watching these heritage auctions, because you start seeing all these books that are out there. but Instagram was another big part of it, because I started following people, and you start seeing some of the stuff that's available that you just don't see very often, and just got me interested in it, and that's how kind of expanded from there. So then COVID is what caused me to create the YouTube channel, and that was someone that I bought some books from asked if I could film an unboxing and post it on Instagram, and I did. And I did like 3 or 4 of them. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll just do it on YouTube. And because I realized that YouTube didn't really have a channel that covered as much of the books that I really like a lot of these older books. And so I realized I was buying these all the time, and I thought maybe other people would like to see them. So that's when I made the channel and started just showing all that stuff, and got into talking about comic markets and that kind of thing. Some during the craziness of the comic boom. And yeah, I'd say just spending as much of my free time as possible learning more about comics is a big part of it. And I mean, surrounding yourself with people that are knowledgeable about it. I mean, that's how you learn this stuff. I mean, some of the stuff there aren't what necessarily websites for it. I mean, you learn from talking to people, and that's a big part of it in a hobby like this, or an industry like this. Yeah. So you comment on the trimming on pulps. That's a tricky part, because sometimes pulps are trimmed in manufacturing, so it's like, I feel like that starts to get really tricky on how you determine if it's post manufacturing trimming or something that's part of that process. And I'm guessing it's very dependent on the publisher and everything. So yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely not knowledgeable about pulps. Do I still think Golden Age will be sought after in 20 years or so by today's young generations? Most of the Golden Age collectors are the boomer generations. Interest might be gone with them. I don't know. I mean, like, for me, like, I had no connection to it really at all. And I just started seeing this stuff, and I was like, those covers are wild. And that's what drew my interest. So it's hard to say, but for me, like, I grew up, like, my favorite characters were Silver Surfer, Spider-Man, Thanos, Wolverine, and I didn't know anything about the Comics Code Authority, about why it was established. And I didn't know anything about pre-code. I mean, I knew about like Superman and Batman from the Golden Age, but I didn't know anything about like the pre-code horror, good girl art, sci-fi, Frank Frazetta, LB Cole, like none of those meant anything to me until like 3 years ago. And so, yeah, I mean, it's something where if something just ends up looking cool to people, I mean, I imagine you still have some connection to it. And that is the other thing. I mean, that's a big part of why, I mean, I've shown these before. My understanding was a big part of like why these like Gerber photo journals were put together is that there was a dying interest in Golden Age books. And one of the challenges was that they're so rare and difficult to come across that people just didn't know about a lot of them. And so that's one of the things why I like doing this on the channel, because I feel like I probably show a lot more Golden Age books than the average channel. And so maybe familiarize people with them, and you get to see them and just some of the crazy stuff, that's out there. I mean, like all the back behind me, I have just a bunch of these Pep Comic World War II, type covers. And it's just, that kind of stuff is interesting to me. It's just that you have these like propaganda covers that are out there, and like how, trying to get people to buy war bonds and, get people on the side of, and like, I mean, just all this stuff, like it was just a big part of history. It was, so something that just really interests me. And hey, Alan, yep. Thanks for joining the live stream. Yeah, make sure to go check out Comic Collector Geek's channel as well. So another channel that talks a lot about Golden Age books, definitely Alan's channel, with Comic Collector Geek. He has an incredible collection. Seems like he has just about every book. So you can see some awesome stuff on his channel. He's always doing, big unboxings and everything for just some incredible books. So yeah, make sure if you like to see that type of content, go and check him out. Let's see here. All right. Yeah. Consume the living. Betty all the way. That's right. Oh, and Troy, yep, thank you very much for the super chat. I'm glad you were able to join. If you've got any questions or anything, let me know, because I know you had messaged me, I think on Instagram, asking to do a live stream last week. I don't know if you ended up been able to pick up any of the books that sold in that in the Heritage auction? Because I know you had said there were some high grade books that you were looking at. But yeah, no, I didn't have time to do one last week, and I decided I would try to get one in this week, and so glad you were able to join the live stream. And again, yeah, thank you very much for the super chat. I'm not going to read the next comment. So I'll leave that one. That the chat can read that one. And hey, Drew, yep, thanks for joining as well. Oh, you did buy a book tonight. So yeah, let us know what book you ended up buying. I knew you bid on one, but I didn't know if you actually ended up. Did you end up buying one of the Peps that came up? Because I wouldn't be surprised if some of those went for some decent prices, because there were so many of them that were selling back to back to back. That's when you can usually like have a deal that slips in, when you have just kind of gets overwhelmed with the demand that might be there. Because I mean, Archie has a pretty solid collector base, but Peps, from the 40s, I mean, it's relatively, it's a little more obscure. And so you might be able to grab some really good deals with those Peps that came up. Yeah. And Mike, like you said here, when you're passionate about it, you get curious about everything, and on the way you just obtain many skills and refine them. And yeah, that's a big part of it. It's just if you're willing to put the time into it. I mean, and for me, like, especially with like the pricing and grading side of things, I mean, these Heritage Weekly auctions, I have watched every single one since like April of 2019. I mean, even when I'm traveling, I'm watching it on my phone. And so I don't miss them. And so you get a lot of exposure, and it just over time that knowledge adds up. You're a millennial and love the golden age. Well, see, there we go. We've got, and I'm technically a millennial, but I'm right on the edge. But yeah, so we've got the younger generation coming in and enjoying golden age. Okay, so I don't if that's a question. Favorite pre-code artist. So if you're talking about pre-code horror, it's probably, I mean, it's tough, but I might have to go with. So Gus Rika is one that it's hard to not say his name, because he's got some of the coolest covers, like Punch 12 and Dynamic Comics 8, which are just some wild early covers. But if I'm thinking like the big names, might be Jack Davis. Like Jack Davis at EC, I mean, he has just some of my absolute favorite covers. And I really do. I like Johnny Craig. He's got a lot of the shock and suspense, or shock type covers, that are out there. But like Tales from the Crypt 35. I mean, this one and 46. Like, this is, to me, like, this is the werewolf cover. This is the werewolf cover for the Golden Age. But but even though my favorite werewolf cover is 46. Because I love this cover, and part of the reason is, to me, this is what the werewolf looks like in Harry Potter. So like I love the depiction of Harry Potter's of the werewolf in Harry Potter, and that's what that werewolf looks like, and it's very different from the one in issue 35. 35, it's that great like front on image of the werewolf, but this kind of like taller, lanky werewolf image, that's how I view it. So I mean, I'd probably have, like, my favorite pre-code horror artists. I mean, some of the greatest covers, like I said, are like Gus Rika, and LB Cole has some really good ones, but Jack Davis is probably my if I had to like pick one. I like the detail of his work, and his work just seems like it's almost at like another level. To me, it's the best quality art that's on the covers in this era. But then if we're talking about like if it's not horror we're talking about, then it's Alex Schomburg. I mean, for me, like, and you saw that in that last video I did. I mean, 3 of the books I bought where Alex Schomburg covers. I mean, he is like, for me, the top of the artists in the golden age. But if we're talking about horror, I'm going to go with Jack Davis. Do I notice any difference in smell between gold, silver, etc.? I mean, there might. I don't know if I've ever paid like that close of attention, but I do like. I mean, I like the smell of opening up one of those books. I don't know what it is about it. I mean, there are occasionally, not always. They're not always great smelling books, but if it's, as long as it's that just normal like older paper smell, I do really like that. I remember Drew with Como Comics, he had mentioned that I think there were some books that he had that he had to leave airing out for like a month because of how they had been stored. It was some awful, horrible smell. So they're not always great. But I do enjoy the smell of opening those older books. And Andy, yeah, thank you very much for the super chat. Really appreciate you checking in on the live stream here and watching the videos. And Eric, am I going to Dallas for the Collector Summit? I am not planning to. I have had a number of people ask if I'm going to that. It's getting tempting, but I mean, it's an expensive trip. So because you gotta get hotels and you gotta get rental cars, and then if you're looking to like buy anything, and then flights and all of that. I'm not planning on it. I'm sure I'm going to get convinced to go to one of these cons that I got to travel to at some point, whether that's Terrificon or Heroes Con, something like that. The Collector Summit would be cool though. I mean, because you, at least like this one, I know it's moved around a couple times, but this one is that you get to go to like Heritage headquarters and see like the crazy stuff that they've got coming up in their upcoming signature auctions. I think at the last one they had like the Marvel Mystery 1 there, and like a Suspense 3 among some other things. And so, yeah, I mean, you get to see some really cool stuff. And I imagine if you're into, especially Golden Age, there's just about anything you want in that room. But no, I'm not planning to right now, but I know I've had a number of people ask. And so I think about it, but I don't know if I want to drop the amount of money it would cost to basically do the travel and stay and everything. So Comic Collector Geek, I was the same way. I really got into Golden Age only in the last 5 years. Had only a slight knowledge of EC Comics before that. Yeah. I mean, if you get dedicated, and I would never have guessed that based on your channel either. Like I would have thought you'd been collecting Golden Age for like the last like 10 years or 15 years or more. I know you had said, I remember I watched one of your recent videos and you said, I think you'd gotten back into it. I'd thought around like 2010, but maybe I'd heard that wrong. So yeah, if it was the last 5 years, it's very similar to me. TJ, it still freaks me out when I was collecting my first collection in the late 60s. Golden Age is only 30 years old at the time. Yeah. I mean, now it's like, what, first Deadpool is like, what's that, like 32 years now. So that's like us or me in modern. Oh, you bought the Vault 15. Nice. Yeah, we were talking about that one during the stream. I think would it go for 300? I think it went for 300, something like that. Nice. Yeah, I was saying how, or Mickey was saying that he might want to end up using those hands on one of his future covers. Demand that me, Drew, and Swagglehus do a play-by-play for the Bobby Blue collection next week. I'm trying not to talk about that collection because I don't want other people bidding on. But yeah, no, if you're not aware of that one, that's the big ComicConnect auction that's coming up. I don't know how many days are left for that. I don't know if it's next week or the week after. But yeah, that one's coming up. There's some crazy books in that. We were talking about Pep 22 earlier. That's one of them. And that's going to be a monster. That book, if you're not familiar with Pep Comics number 22, I'll show the cover. So this is the cover for Pep 22. This is the first appearance of Archie, Betty, and Jughead. So this World War II cover, you don't have Archie on the cover. You've got Hangman and the Shield, and I don't remember who this character's name is. But that book is a beast. It has not a unrestored copy hasn't sold for, it might be 5 years. I think it's at least 3. Let's see. So let's see. We've got 2017, 2018, 18. Yeah. Unrestored copy has not sold for 5 years. 2018 was the last one. There was a 5.0 that went for 91,000 and a 2.5 that went for 36,000. That book is going to go insane. I think, just because I think there is a lot of pent up demand for that one. There was a conserved that sold. Yeah, here. It's because it's sold on ComicLink, so it's not here. It sold recently on ComicLink for like 24, I think, something like that. But it was the same one. It was this 2.5 from 2020. But then you've got, restored copies that might come up for sale every once in a while, like a 3.0. I think the one on ComicConnect is a 3.0 as well, but it's not restored. It is a universal. And like I said, that one, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if that book sold for 80,000 for a 3.0. I mean, it could go for more. I don't even know. I don't know how to price a book that hasn't sold for 5 years, but I would not be surprised if 80,000 was a number that book hit, if not higher. But yes, I mean, if that sale is going on at like night, I would be happy to do a live stream of that one. Even though the ComicConnect live streams are a pain. Because if with Heritage, you saw Heritage is like one book after another, and you just, you watch each one sell. ComicConnect, the way their auction site works is when someone bids, it adds like 3 minutes onto it. If it's within 3 minutes of the end, someone bids, it adds 3 minutes on, and then it just keeps going with the other books though. So you have like tons of books that by the end of the auction that are ending all around the same time and overlapping one another. And it can be very difficult to watch multiple books at once. So that's the big challenge with ComicConnect. If you're trying to watch multiple books, it can be difficult. So you might need to have like multiple windows open or something like that. If Heritage is top on Golden Age, what would be the second and third biggest place to pick them up? And is Heritage overpriced? I wouldn't. I mean, it's an auction, so I mean you can never really, to me, like you can never say an auction is overpriced or not. It's what people are bidding, and so I think I was actually talking about this recently with someone else in a private chat about different places are better or worse for different types of books, whether it's Golden Age or pre-code horror or Matt Baker or original art and that kind of thing. And I mean, I don't even know if I would say, I think a lot of them generally, so in terms of the books themselves, they all do relatively similar when you're talking about the big auction houses. There are certain things that sell better or worse within them. So like I've noticed on average, brittle page and slightly brittle page books sell for less on Heritage. They sell for more on other platforms. And I don't know if it's just the buyer pool that tends to buy in Heritage is more picky about page quality, whereas they aren't in other places. And I've noticed generally like restored books tend to not do as well on Heritage. And I think the buyer pool is maybe a little more picky on restored books. And so, but if I had to pick the order, I honestly, I think on average, ComicConnect often gets the biggest numbers. I wouldn't necessarily say it is Heritage. I think ComicConnect often does some of the biggest numbers. Heritage sells a lot more. So, I mean, because the Heritage has these sales every single week. And I'm not basing that on any, like I haven't done a study or anything like that. So don't come after me. This is just based on, I remember when I was first getting back into buying and selling, I was looking at all the different platforms and I felt like ComicConnect tended to get on average bigger numbers. And I think part of it is that they do that type of, where it adds the 3 minutes and it forces so much time into when people are bidding that I think it often does that. But it, like I mentioned, it does have that problem too, where for a person like me, where I'm like in this auction tonight alone, I was watching 60 books. And so out of the, I don't know how many, like 300 or whatever that sold in the Golden Age era, for the Golden Age books. And so when you're trying to watch that many and you get a bunch of them overlapping, it gets real tricky to bid. That doesn't happen on Heritage, which is something I really like, but it does happen on ComicConnect. So it's just, there's some issues there, but I'd probably put, I think ComicConnect is probably top, then probably Heritage, then probably Comic Link. But I mean, I know, like, I mean, some people might disagree with me, like, for Golden Age, at least. Like, I know ETA Nick, I remember he always sent all his stuff to Comic Link because he saw that his books got good numbers there. So, but yeah, that's just my anecdotal evidence. I don't have any hard evidence on that. It's amazing watching the interest in Golden Age skyrocket the last few years. I never thought I would see people so excited over romance and non-key GA books. Yeah, I mean, romance, that's still a pretty tight market, you know, like that's part of why I did buy a few romance books early on when I was trying out different types of books in the Golden Age, when I was buying and selling some stuff. And I noticed romance books tend to sit longer, you know, they do. And so I'd say it's a much smaller buyer pool than horror and sci-fi and superhero. I mean, superhero, it's like the top, then horror, then sci-fi. Well, probably then horror, then good girl art, then sci-fi, then romance, then Western. Western is like all the way at the bottom. But yeah, but like pre-code horror, it definitely has had a huge boom. Good girl art has had a huge boom. And I think like Timely, especially Timely has really picked up. It's like when you start realizing how tough it is to get some of these books, I think just made people want to make a more concerted effort to get them, and then didn't want to sell them once they got them. I'd love to do a play-by-play, but I assume it's during the day. Yeah, I don't know about the ComicConnect ones. I just, like I said, I don't watch those ones as often. I thought they were at night, but it all depends. Maybe it depends on where you are in the country. But hopefully they're at night, because there's a few books that I'd be interested in. Como says, I like Craig's early stuff, which is always overshadowed by the later, more shocking stuff. Yeah, and so yeah, that's the thing. Like, he definitely has those. Johnny Craig has those covers like Crime Suspense Stories 22 and Crime Suspense Stories 17, Vault of Horror 35, like those ones that are like the really, like, I mean, granted, Vault of Horror 35 is one of my favorite pre-code horror covers, but yeah, I think like he gets that shock value, but in terms of like art quality, Jack Davis is my guy. Let's see. Alex Schomburg has been tops with me since 1988 when I started collecting Golden Age. Yeah, there's something about it. I mean, like, that's without even knowing the artists when I first got into Golden Age. There's just certain things that drew my attention. And Alex Schomburg, Timely World War II covers were a big one. Suspense 3, like if you'd never seen Suspense 3 before, like that is one. You know, like that's one of those books I would love to own a copy of that book at some point. If you're not familiar with Suspense Comics number 3, it's considered arguably like his best cover, but it's let's zoom out a little bit. So yeah, it's this one. And so it's an Alex Schomburg cover. LB Cole has some of the interior work, but just a crazy cover. And it's one of those things where when you look at, it's kind of funny because Suspense Comics 1, 3, and 4 all have very similar covers. And so if you go to like Suspense Comics 1 and you see like this is the cover, and you've got, you know, the branding iron and like devil character and a guy that's going to jump in, then you look at that versus this. I mean, just like you can tell the quality of art on this one is another level. And then when you go to issue 4, which is very early LB Cole, and so that's why I give him a little more, you know, grace on this one. Like this is, I think, like LB Cole's like 3rd cover. And so again, you know, you can see it's like these two, like similar quality art. I'd say like the drawing of the woman is pretty good on this cover. Not there's something left to be desired with like the villains. Then this one, there's just, I don't know, it's not that impressive. Like one, just it's missing something, and 3 just has all of it. And so you can just really tell the difference in the quality of the artists at this stage in their careers. Oh yeah, Como, that must have been the smelly books that you're talking about, the mildew. Yeah. Let's see. So you said you had your eye. Oh, was this last week maybe that you had your eyes on Playboy and FF7? Both went for a little more than I wanted to spend. The FF was in the top 150 at a 7.0. Oh, the Donald Trump one. Yeah, I did see that one. I did see that one come up for that was up for sale. Let's see. Try to get a media pass, and at least helps with the cost of the convention. Yeah, I'm not as worried about the convention cost itself. I mean, worst case, that's probably, I don't know, 50 or $100. But yeah, like flights and hotels and food and like if I have to get like sitters for our dogs, that kind of thing, it all becomes very, very expensive. Let's see. Yeah, how can books from the 80s be over 40 years old? Yeah, exactly. It is. I mean, but it's still crazy when you look at when I did that video about the top 10 Bronze Age, or no, was it the top 10 Copper Age books? And you've got books that are not quite 40 there, but mid 30s, there, and there's just tens of thousands of them on the census, and just tons of them in 9/8. I mean, you just see. That was one of the things I thought was really interesting, because I've now done a top 10 Silver Age, a top 10 Bronze Age, and a top 10 Copper Age. Those are the ones that I did in conjunction with Fanalytics channel. And when you look at the census numbers, as you move through those eras, it's just wild. I mean, Silver Age, like the biggest books, you're going to have 2,000 or 3,000. I mean, X-Men's a little bit later, so I think you have around 5,000. But then you get to Bronze Age, and the biggest books are 12 to 15,000. Then you get to Copper, and the biggest books are 25 to 30,000. I think, I believe the most graded book is Amazing Spider-Man 300. And I think it's got to be, I think it's over 30,000. Yeah, all grades. And now I'm sure there's some resubs in there and all of that, but 34,699. I mean, just wild. And I talked about that in that video, but that's why when prices spiked, it's just not surprising that they corrected as fast as they did, because there's so many copies out there and so many people. I mean, just in a 9/8, 1,454. I mean, so many of them. And so people, like, when they see big prices, they're just like, I'll sell that for that. And so they just start dumping them, and then you have the prices correct pretty quickly. Yeah, recap video. Yeah, exactly. Or we put like a big lag on I mean, the problem is with ComicConnect, it's that 3-minute, added bid, so it's like everybody, like at least with Heritage, if I'm bidding on something here, it's like 5 seconds are added or so approximately. But yeah, that 3-minute ad, everybody's going to know. They're going to know that you're bidding on that stuff. So your challenge with buying a Golden Age Raw is trying to figure out how much to pay when some books sell so infrequently. Yeah, I mean, pricing Golden Age is definitely, I call it like more of an art than in the other, than a science than in the other ages, just because you're really having to use sales prices in other grades and trying to approximate based on price per point. And price per point isn't always consistent between grades. A lot of times you'll have it where the buy-in for a book is very high, and then you have a lot of price compression for a few grades, and then it starts picking up again. And but I mean, all you can do is make your best estimate and go with that. And that's what I do. I price like for tonight, I priced out 60 or 61 different Golden Age books for this. And, some of them rarely ever sell, like these Blue Ribbon comics. If you're not familiar, that's one of the titles from MLJ. And there was one that, let's find it. It was a big number, so it should be near the top here. So yeah, this one here. So Blue Ribbon Comics number 18, in a 6.0. I mean, these books, they just don't ever really sell. And so you have to make your best estimate. Sometimes you use other books in the same run, like maybe issue 17 or issue 19, and you look at what those ones sold for. Try to look for ones that have similar cover content, all that kind of stuff. But really all you can do is make your best guess and go from there. Yeah, I also do not expect to own Pep 22. That's why I've made attempts at 26, which is the first Veronica, because I know that 22 is not possible. But even first appearance of Veronica is extremely expensive. I mean, I thought I had won it in like an auction a couple months ago, and they kept playing with me. It would go down to the last second, and then they would bid. And I went stronger than I had been planning on that one. It was this one, May. So yeah, it was, I was the underbid on, I think it'll probably show it if I go. Yeah. So yeah, that was my bid. So I was the underbid on that one. I really wanted this copy, and this is the first, so this is the first appearance of Veronica Lodge and the Liberty Bell cover. And I think I started bidding on it, and it was down around like 7,000 or something like that. And I think it was probably me and one other person, and I just kept going back and forth, and I eventually caved, and I did not win that book. But yeah, that's what I figure is like my silver medal for the Pep run, and I couldn't get it done. I wonder if movies like Oppenheimer help with Golden Age comics interest in sales. I have no idea. It's possible. We saw Barbie this weekend. That was a great movie. So I have not seen Oppenheimer, but I went with my wife and we saw the Barbie movie. Enjoyed that. That was fun. But then I finally, last night, I watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and I really liked it. I would put it, Guardians 1 is one of my favorite movies of the entire MCU. And so I'd put it below that, but better than 2. It's hard to say because I've only seen it once so far, but as that like rocket origin story, that was really good. The special effects was back to what I expect from Marvel. Special effects were fantastic in that movie. And so like, I feel like we've been getting kind of a mix of quality and special effects. And those were amazing in that one. Story was really fun. I'd say it was a little on the long side. I mean, I don't think it needed to be like what it was, like maybe 2 hours and 20 minutes or whatever it was. But I really enjoyed it. I thought the villain was great. I really enjoyed the villain in that one. So in general, and they didn't show him dying, so he's probably still out there somewhere. But yeah, no, I liked Guardians 3. Let's see. Yeah. Eric, like I mentioned, yeah, ComicConnect can be difficult to track. It's at least you have a watch list. That's the thing I don't like about Comic Link, is you don't have a watch list. You have to bid on stuff to create a watch list. Longtime fan here. I'm always amazed at the variety of Golden Age books you pull out of the boxes and seem to know so much about. Super Old Comics, Eerie Comics. Yeah. No, I don't have the Gerber books memorized. But I mean, there are certain things where you just, when you don't see a book, like for me now, like I talked about this a little earlier, but the thing that has really helped me has been watching all of these weekly heritage auctions. I just see everything. And I also watch their signature auctions, or at least I watch I store books that are going to be up for sale. I can't necessarily watch them because they go on during the middle of the day sometimes, but I at least know the books are coming up. And So just seeing all that stuff really, it helps familiarize you. And I have a pretty good memory, so the stuff sticks in my mind. But that's why if there's a book I haven't seen before, like that Super World #2, I had never seen that book come up for sale before. And then when I checked, it was because that book had never sold since I got back into collecting, at least publicly. And so that's just wild. And so that was one. The other one that happened with was, I think it was Red Dragon 7. That is one of the craziest covers from the Golden Age. I'm pretty sure it's 7. Yeah. So it's this Japanese World War II, like disintegration cover, and just wild, like a wild cover. And I remember that one popped up on Heritage, and I bought it when it came up on Heritage, and I was just, because I've never seen that book before. And so when that happens for me, like I've seen a lot of books now just in the last 4.5 years or so, or like 4 years, 4.5 years. And so when something I haven't seen before pops up, it really catches my attention. And so like that was an example of one, and the Super World 2 was definitely an example of one. Yeah, I have never bid on Golden. I'm not real interested in Golden. I know some people have gotten some good deals there. But yeah, I've heard they have a very similar thing, but I didn't realize it was 15 minutes. That would be really obnoxious. Yeah, I mean, so you said it seems like YouTube channels like yours and others showing Golden Age books might be helping interest, especially for pre-code horror. I mentioned this earlier. That's part of why I've wanted to keep making these videos. Is I think it really does help familiarize people with some of this stuff, because otherwise you just might never see it. I mean that was a big part of it for me. Like it was hard for me to find YouTube content when I got back into comics that covered these type of books, and that was why I went onto Instagram a lot, and that's where I found people posting those types of books on Instagram. But yeah, no, I'm if that has helped bring more awareness to Golden Age, if channels like mine or Comic Collector Geeks or Alex Comic Order, people that show more of the Golden Age books, then I'm all for it. I've seen pieces of Suspense 3 before, still blew me away. Yeah, no, I that is definitely one I will own one of those at one point. There are certain books I'll say, like, I will own one. I will own a Tech 31. At some point, I will own a Tech 31, and I will own a Suspense Comics 3. I don't know how many years it's going to be until I get one of those, and how many books I'm going to have to consolidate down to get one, but I will own one of those at some point. Oh yeah. Schomburg on the early Captain Americas and Marvel Mysteries. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's night and day to me for quality of those covers. What do I think about Walt Disney's Comics and Stories #1? I love that cover because that is one of my keeper books. I actually, it is currently one of my 20 keeper books. I have I think mine's a 4.5. Let me double check. I'm pretty sure it's a 4.5. Just got my little spreadsheet here. There we go. Let me check. Pretty sure it's either a 4 or 4.5. Yeah, 4.5. So yes, I am a big fan of Walt Disney's Comics and Stories #1. I think it is. I think it's the best cover from the entire run. There's some close ones. There's some of those. There's some cool like War Bonds type covers, Uncle Sam type covers, but I really like that opening the front page. I think it's just a amazing cover. So yes, I am a big fan of that one. And that one, it's one of those books that it's real expensive just to get in. Just to get into it is a very expensive book. I saw like a raw one, I think, on Instagram sell for, and it was like a 1.0 at best. I think it sold for over 2,000. So yeah, it's definitely not a cheap book to get. It might have even been more than that. Have I ever looked at Terrific 5? Me personally, and I feel like it's like heresy or something to say, but I'm not. Terrific 5 is not my favorite cover. There are other ones I like more. than Terrific 5. I know Terrific 5 is one that a lot of people like, and it is a very expensive book. But like for me, like if you're talking about the like crazy torture, Alex Schomburg type covers, to me, the one that I currently have kept on my keeper list is my favorite one, which is Marvel Mystery number 52. So I can show both of those so people can take a look. So Terrific 5 is this yellow cover. So yeah, so that's Terrific 5, which is, it is a crazy wild cover. I know a lot of people really like this cover. I can zoom in on it a little bit. Where you've got the, this good girl art type covers, she's being dropped down onto this spinning wheel of spikes. So the thing to me, the issue is that it's missing, like what I'm looking for in these types of covers is I'm looking for as many elements as possible. And the thing that this cover is missing is that World War II element. You have, the hooded characters, but they're not like designated as, Nazis or Germans or anything like that. And so to me, it's missing that element. Whereas, a cover like Marvel Mystery 52, which is this one, both by Schomburg, but this one has, and I'm going to just remove this comment for now. It has like all of those elements. You've got the crazy, like good girl art bondage type cover, this contraption that's just wild, like this machine thing that's going to smush them. You've got the hooded Nazi with the scepter with a swastika on the top. You've got Human Torch blasting through the wall, the classic Schomburg Human Torch. You've got, the soldiers and, the machinery and everything. This one to me has everything. And so that's why, like, this one is my I put it as my favorite cover of that genre, of that type. And, but, it's everybody's taste is different. Everybody likes different things. But to me, that Terrific 5 to me is missing that one element. And that's one of the things that has made it so I don't like it as much as some other covers. Let's see. Any interest? Let's see. The interest in pre-code horror seems to have fed a renewed interest in silver and bronze. That does seem to be true. There are some great covers and that kind of stuff in the Bronze and Silver Age horror. I haven't really gotten into it. I saw it made me laugh. If you haven't watched Mickey's like Evolution of a Collector, he made a really funny comment about high grade Bronze Age horror in there, and it made me laugh out loud. So I'd recommend going and checking that one out. That is a great video. It is a very entertaining video, and he made a joke about my pipe on the wall in there too. So I also appreciated that. But yeah, no, the high grade Bronze Age horror has been getting more attention. That's what if you wanted to go that route, like it's very cheap to collect. Like if you want to get just like buy books in those, like if you are fine with like mid grades and lower, really, really affordable. If you want the high grade ones, 9.6, 9.8, that's when it starts to get very pricey. There aren't nearly as many of them out there. Are there any Golden Age publishers not as respected as others? Oh, for sure. There are a lot of, I probably can't even name a lot of them. There are a lot of Golden Age publishers. And that's why, that's one of the challenges with Golden Age versus Bronze, Silver, Modern is that when you're talking about Bronze and Silver and Modern, there are some independents, but for the most part, it's DC and Marvel. It's really, you have two choices and it's pretty clear cut. But with the Golden Age, there's probably 20, 30 publishers, there's tons of them. And some of them have, are consistently, high value books, like Timely in general, but even in time. So Timely, which became Marvel, which became Atlas, which became Marvel, you have like their mainstream stuff, like the hero stuff, like Captain America, Marvel Mystery, Submariner. And then you get into some of their more like romance or good girl art type titles like Hetty Divine and Comedy Comics and, and this kind of stuff. And so there's big value differences, depending on that. And so that's one of the challenges with the golden age is that it can be intimidating because there's so much that's out there. There's a lot that even if it's rare, it does not mean it has value. And even if you get it for a good deal, it may take you years to find someone else that actually wants it. And so you do have to, it is good to put in the time to learn. If you're looking at it from, an investment side of things. I mean, if you're looking at it from a collector side of things, maybe it doesn't matter to you. But if you're looking at it from something where at some point down the line, you want to have some type of return or you want to be able to sell your books, then you do really want to learn what those big publishers are, who the big artists are, what the more popular titles are, those kinds of things. Because there's so much out there that even if, the big thing is a lot of people will reference like the census and say like, oh, it only has 2 copies on the census. And it's like that may be, but it could be that there are tons of copies out there, but there's just no value in the book. And so nobody gets it graded. And so the census can be misleading at times. So it's definitely something where, but yes, there are publishers that are definitely more respected than others. Do I ever buy brittle big keys? Yeah, I buy brittle books and slightly brittle books regularly. I don't have any problem buying them. And I'll tell you, one of the big reasons why is because I have had a number of books that I've sent in to get graded that have gotten brittle and slightly brittle. And I have flipped through those books and they are perfectly fine. Like they're like supple pages and everything, but there might be like, even on a book that's classified as brittle, it might just be a small corner that's brittle. And the rest of the book is extremely well taken care of and clean and everything. And so I know some people have said that they would like CGC to change how they show brittleness on their when they're grading, like whether they have like some type of image that shows, like the brittleness is here on the cover, it's like this small amount, or if it's the whole thing. Because I have also had, I had an all flash one that I was still able to flip through it. But, when you turn the pages, you would occasionally see little pieces fleck off. And so that one I knew was going to get brittle. But I've had other ones where I've been surprised that they got a brittle designation because it just didn't feel like anything was brittle to me when I was going through and grading that book. So there are massive ranges between, just within brittle, where like CGC will say like just a small amount is brittle, but we mark the whole book as that. And so I have no problem buying brittle books. Now, if you're buying the book and you see like a whole bunch of like little pieces all throughout, the inside of the case, like maybe that's something you want to treat as like a little more of a warning sign. But on average, I've seen that it's often just a small portion of the book. Yeah, James Gunn knows how to get you emotionally collected. Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely teared up a couple times during Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I don't like the history with Rocket and like the other characters he's with there. I mean, I feel like it's hard not to. Do I bid or keep an eye on the My Comic Shop weekly auctions? I've bid on them a couple times. I just don't have time. there's so many like different places. I've thought about it. I feel like they're, they can have some good prices and they can have some big numbers. Clearly people keep giving books to them to sell. And so they definitely have a lot of eyes. I mean, they're a massive auction house or, seller. I think they're the biggest seller in the country. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that if I had the time or if I needed more places to look for books, I would definitely go and check My Comic Shop. But yeah, I've bought a few there, but I don't regularly watch it. Have I ever gotten into animation art? No, I am a big anime fan. I've talked about that some on the channel. I'm regularly watching like between 5 and 10 different anime at the same time. I have my Crunchyroll subscription, and I just like, as new episodes come out each week, I'm just cycling through different shows. But I haven't ever felt like I wanted to get into that as a collectible thing. Like I haven't had any interest in collecting the manga. I haven't had any interest in collecting like cells. I just like watching the anime. I have heard that like that could be like a big thing. Like kids seem to be, like younger generation is really into collecting the manga, but I can't tell if it's just something people are trying to make happen, like I feel like, like VHS, like they're trying to like make that happen. But I don't know if that's the case there or not, but it's just, again, it's not something that I'm all that interested in. I just really like watching the shows. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, watching the channel. Yeah, if you want to learn about Golden Age values, I mean, the best thing to do is to watch auctions like this and familiarize yourself with the books and get subscriptions or a subscription to pricing services. Like in the future, when it comes out, Fanalytics, and as well you have right now, like I've shown tonight, I've shown Go Collect and GPA. I have cover price too. Like I have all of them. To me, especially with the amount of time and money I put into comics, like it's well worth it to spend 10, 20, whatever dollars per month to have that knowledge. It is. I tell people this is like, don't save money on the wrong things. Don't go cheap on the wrong things. And having that knowledge on pricing is well worth the few dollars. I mean, I know a lot of people will try to just use eBay sold listings, but that you only get 90 days, and especially if you're dealing with Golden Age, that is not enough. You need something that goes back further. And so that is always one, like whenever I make these videos about like tips for buying, tips for selling, having a pricing service is always one of the top things I talk about because it is so important. Do I also collect raws that are not on Keeper's list? Well, so, I mean, I have my childhood collection, and that's all raw, and that I've sold a few books from it, but it's generally just in like 3 or 4 long boxes. But if it is not on the Keeper list, other than like the childhood collection, it's up for sale. I do buy raw books. I do buy and sell raw books as well. I have bought raw books that have become Keeper books, like the Marvel Mystery 52 that I bought as a raw. My Phantom Lady 17 that's at my presser right now. I did a little story about it because he fixed a spine roll on it. That I bought as a raw. The Superman 2 that I bought as a raw. So there are, I buy bigger books like Keeper books as raws, and I will get them, but I'm generally going to get those graded. Just if a book is at that value, I generally want to get that book graded. I think the Phantom Lady 17 was the most I've spent on a raw, though. That the second most is probably the Captain America 5. That was also raw, and that is also on my Keeper list right now. But if I got a Captain America 3, it would kick it off. I would love to get a Captain America 3. Are the anamorphic characters from Timely sought out? I mean, not that much. I mean, I know there is a collector base for them, but I would say not all that much. TJ says, I was very fortunate to get back from CGC, A House of Mystery 213.96. Only one other 9.6 on census, nothing higher. Don't even know what the value would be. Yeah, those are the types of books that you almost have to auction them. I mean, you could try listing them and just putting a number on it, but you may go low, or it may sit there forever because nobody wants to just be the person that takes that first step. And so if you were selling it for books like that, that's where auctioning really does play an important role, because it's when you have a book that is extremely difficult to price. Is there a way to humidify a book to reduce the brittle pages? Not there. There are ways to help brittleness on pages, but not ways that will not get you a restored or at least a conserved label. If you are like, when people are pressing books, they will humidify them, but that is not something that stays with the book forever. That goes away after you've effectively pressed the book. But there are ways to improve that, but yeah, you're going to get my understanding, at least, you're going to get a restored or a conserved label. Yeah. I mean, that is definitely one of the ones that I've watched. Yeah. The what is it? The sword, the city. I'm blanking on the name. I've just watched so much of this stuff. The latest arc where they're in the city where they make their swords was awesome. That was really good. I mean, the train arc was really good too, but what would I have to say? I think this one might have been the best one. This one was pretty great. I don't know. This one was pretty great. But and they took out two of the big villains in it. So out of context at this point. Sorry, referring to CGC brittleness. I'm not sure. Maybe I answered that. Oh yeah, you did. Okay, I think you were talking about the B1 to B5 restoration. Yeah. So yeah, something wrong. That's the same thing. Yeah, as I was saying, like you can't keep a universal grade. You're going to get some type of restored grade. And yeah, hey Dan, thanks for joining. I'm just going through answering some questions, and I will probably be dropping pretty soon. But as long as there's still some questions, I'm happy to keep talking. As old and fragile as these older books are becoming, we should reconsider restoration of comics. Yeah, and that's where like my Superman 2, I am sending that one I sent off to actually be conserved. I sent that to Sanderson Studios, and he's doing the conservation on that book. He's going to do some leaf casting on the cover so that you can, because it has a split spine, there's tape on it. He's going to remove the tape. He's going to reattach the cover, that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I had bought that in my last unboxing video. I had the Detective Comics 38, first Robin, and that's a restored book. Like I mean, there's especially certain things where when you're talking about these really old Golden Age books, these rare books, these high value books, like restoration and conservation, I don't have nearly I really don't have hardly any issue with. It's just because there's so few of them, you get what you can get. Like you're happy to have anything. And so whether it's restored or conserved or universal, doesn't matter quite as much. Now, I mean, universal is always going to have the most value. There's no question about that. But with Golden Age, to me, it's much more acceptable. When you get to silver, bronze, modern, that kind of thing, I mean, there's just so many that's when the restoration becomes, to me, a much harder thing to justify. Any recommendation to fix a detached centerfold? Well, some people will try to, like, if it hasn't completely torn the paper, like slip it back in under the staple, so there are ways you can maybe kind of reattach it, but otherwise generally you'd have to either tape it in, or well, you wouldn't get a restored label for tape, but I wouldn't add the tape. You can get pretty high grades with centerfolds. If that's your goal, if your goal is to grade the book, the highest grade I've ever seen with a detached centerfold is an 8.5. The typical, like if you look at ETA Nick's like grading card is like tip card, he says it's a 7.0, but I have seen an 8.5. I remember when it sold on Heritage, that's what really caught my attention because it was outside of that range I was expecting. But typically you can assume you can get at least a 7.0 if everything else is nice with a detached centerfold. So just something where you might not even need to reattach it. It might not, if the rest of the book is a certain condition already, it doesn't matter for the grade. Let's see. I saw a 3D book with loose glasses as a green label. Why? Yeah. So loose glasses and no glasses is definitely going to be a green label. Loose glasses, I'm almost surprised that they kept them in there. I think because like a lot of times if you have something that's loose with the book, they'll just send it back to you. They won't keep it in there because it's just something that could be moving around inside the case. But yeah, it has to be attached to be, because otherwise, I mean, it's just like, it's damage, right? If it's detached, that's the main reason why. Would I rather have a trimmed book or a remaindered blue label? Probably trimmed. No, trimmed, not probably. I'd rather have a trimmed book than a remaindered blue label. I guess it depends on the overall appearance of the book, but yeah, remainder, you're getting a 0.5 and it's severely taking away from the appearance of the book. I mean, I do have one remainder book. I have a Pep 23. So second Archie, that's a remainder. But so like, again, it's like certain rarity, you take what you can get. But in general, I would take a trimmed book over a remaindered book all day. Just because, to me, my biggest pet peeve for defects on a book is big pieces out of the front of the cover. That's the thing I generally try to avoid. And so that would be a big hit for me. Yeah, loose centerfold is not green. The only way you might get a green on a loose centerfold is if it was like a 9.8 or a 9.6 or even maybe a 9.0 copy and it had a loose centerfold. They might give you a green then. Because like I said, like you have certain flaws that are going to cap your grade. And so if you have something where you have a much nicer book than that flaw, then you might get a green label because the book is like, looks like a 9.6, but it has a loose centerfold, or a detached, not loose, but a detached centerfold. But if the book looks like a 7.0 and it has a detached centerfold, you might still get a 7.0. Conservation seems like a pricey or risky endeavor. Well, I mean, the Superman 2, I think he quoted me, it's like $250, something like that. It's not that bad. So for doing the leaf casting and, the cleaning and removing tape and everything, like, yeah, there are definitely some things that can be very expensive. I know Alex Comic Hoarder had a early Marvel Mystery Comics conserved, but he had every single page leaf cast, and that was very expensive. But if you're just looking at like the cover or something like that, or trying to reattach a centerfold, whatever it might be, it really doesn't seem that bad. I mean, I think archival tape generally gets treated the same as any other tape. I mean, regular tape is going to damage the book longer term, but in terms of how CGC is grading it, I think they treat it similar. Let's see. Yeah, conservation is reversible. Not necessarily, because you can clean a book and it can be considered conserved, and you can replace staples and it can be considered conserved. Neither of those things, I believe, can be reversed. You can reverse the leaf casting, but there are some types of conservation that I believe cannot be reversed, and it's the cleaning and the staple replacement. There may be something else that I'm missing there, but I'm pretty sure it's those two. Let's see. Dan, is there a company that reproduces things like missing centerfolds? I own a rare All Winners 2 or 21 that needs a sort of restoration. I'm actually, there are places that do complete like rebuilds of books. I mean, like when they're doing the color touch on the cover, I mean, they are, they have artists usually on staff that are redrawing that. And I believe it's very similar with the internal pages. They can do that similar type of work. Now, I don't know I don't know who does what. I know one that I've seen a lot, at least on Instagram, is Phantom Restoration. So you might want to check with them. They seem to do quite a bit of restoration work. But yeah, I've never had restoration done. I'm not that's not something I've ever gone down that route. Just the conservation. I haven't done the restoration where they're actually adding new color or anything like that to the books. Let's see. So, what are your thoughts on buying coverless books and getting high quality replica covers done? I mean, if I was buying a coverless book, I'd probably just leave it coverless, but I mean, I've bid on coverless books before. I don't have any issue with it. I mean, as long as you know what you're getting, right? Like you're not having that cover. I mean, but just because it's a coverless book doesn't mean it's still not some important, especially with certain types of books, like especially like Detective Comics 38, Detective Comics 168. So that's like, First Robin, like the cover is basically the same as the first splash page. Like it's Robin jumping through again. And so you see it's a great first page. Tech 168, First Red Hood, it's almost identical to the cover. And so there are some really great splash pages that are like the opening splash pages that can, be a great reason to still have that book and keep it as is. But yeah, I mean, that's all up to you. If you wanted to have a a new cover made, that's fine as well. But yeah, this has been great. I really appreciate everybody joining in the chat and hanging out with me tonight and watching the live sale and all that. And been on here for about 2.5 hours. so I think I'm gonna head out. But yeah, no, again, appreciate all the super chats, appreciate all the comments, all the, make sure like the video when you leave. It helps out for everything else. And make sure again to, let me find that giveaway over here. Go check out the other video that I just put out with the 4 books that I picked up. I'm doing this giveaway as part of it. Batman number 34. And if you want a chance to win this book, follow the instructions that are in that video. And thanks again, and I will see you hopefully on the next live stream.